Excellent. So welcome to TADSummit Asia. We have an Innovator interview, and this is on the importance of hacking with David Curran about Science Hack Day. David does great work in a whole range of different disciplines, particularly around chatbots and AI, but he's got an amazing history. And we'll be giving some presentations during TADSummit Asia as well. This is focused on why he gets involved in hackathons, because they are important, and I believe it's something that we need to do more throughout Asia. So welcome, David. Would you please introduce yourselves and provide a little bit of background about your life and career, please?
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me along. So I work in AI, usually with language. So things like people have problems, we have to get a computer that'll understand what the problem is and be able to figure out an answer. I work generally in travel at the moment. That's having a few problems. I think most of us are currently in our kids' bedrooms and stuff doing all these sort of meetings. So travel isn't difficulty at the moment. I used to work for IBM Watson. That would tend to be banks and finance and these sorts of big companies. They have lots of text, and trying to get value out of that data is valuable to them. But what we're going to talk about today is the sort of more hobby end of things, where working with electronics, things that are more with your hands, more sort of standing over a soldering iron, plugging in things, getting stuff flashing and moving. It's kind of more fun than just, curled up over a laptop all day. So we might have a quick chat today about how to get involved in or started, or if you have the skills to help spread them around the place through hackathons.
Perfect. Excellent. So I'm interested to what got you into machine learning in the first place?
So my background is in computer science and sort of encryption and stuff like that was what I did my postgrad in, and I was working with computer viruses, and I wasn't really built for it. I'm more sort of curious than deep, if that makes sense. Wide than deep.
Yeah.
And my wife was a bit sick. She was in hospital one day, and I went into the bookshop, and they had this book called Super Crunchers. It was just a guide essentially to statistics and prediction. And and I managed to read it by the time she was coming out of the operating theatre and everything. And it was like, oh, right, that was easy. But considering it was a terrible time, it was kind of unusual. And something about it appealed to me. I think it was the idea that, oh, right, you can predict the price of wine or who's going to win a presidential election or these sorts of things in a world that a lot of stuff, as we're learning now, isn't that predictable. So anyway, that's what appealed to me.
Cool. Excellent. Now, one of my rants, I have many rants, but one is, there is no such thing as AI today. There will be, but, that's why I refer to it as machine learning. Yet we have this situation where AI is being used as a band-aid, a marketing term that's plastered over everything. It's like, it doesn't matter whether it's sensible or not application of AI, it just gets banged on there. And it reminds me of, about a decade ago where big data was going to solve all the world's problems. We just collect lots and lots of data, and then we have basically data scientists that shake their magic stick at it, and then it turns into insights and the world's greater. I'm interested, given you're in the midst of this, how do you see this playing out in the next couple of years?
I find that the more experience people have in this area, the more cynical they are about it. An awful lot of sort of grizzled engineers or even statisticians are a lot more clear-eyed about this situation. And, that goes from everything from, is AI about to take over? Almost everyone I know who works in the field thinks, no, that's not, we could be wrong, but none of us would, think that's very likely in the near term.
Yeah.
To basic stuff like proper engineering, how do you make sure that the system will work, will still be understandable in 5 years' time? This sort of stuff that is just not considered a lot of the time. To basic things like statistics. I've seen like medical systems that had really, really high accuracy. And they had high accuracy because on the patients that had cancer, there was a red sticker on them, and the patients that didn't, there wasn't a red sticker. And so the classifier figured out, oh, red sticker means you have cancer. And it's like, yeah, but that's not a reasonable, these sort of basic things. A really good algorithm is really important and clever and make it tune it this way. Yeah. But basic understanding of the A to Z of the pipeline is really important. I think a lot of times that's missed.
Yeah, no, I agree. Underlying this is the whole topic of statistics. So you're right. It's important to understand the basics here. So that's great in terms of just understanding your background. So I'm interested, what got you into hackathons and what do you consider the value of them?
So there's a science hack day that takes place yearly in an awful lot of cases around the world, and one takes place in Dublin since about 2012. And some of these people are my friends. Some of them I just see around places. There's a TOG is a makerspace in Dublin. Dublin doesn't have a huge makerspace community, but TOG is a really good one. And I know some of the people in there, and they sort of invited people out to this science hack day.
Gotcha.
There's kind of two kinds of hackathons you tend to see. It tends to be like, Google will set up a hackathon in order to get you to use Android and to program Android. And that's fine. And I can see why they do that. And then there's sort of, for fun, we're going to see this new technology. When blockchain first came out, there was blockchain hackathons and people were getting their hands dirty on blockchain, and that's fine. Or in this case, Science Hack Day, it's come along, have fun, try and make something vaguely science related, and ideally something physical that moves and jumps up and down or something like that. And I think they're great fun, those, because you get to meet your friends, you get to learn some new skills. And a lot of times these are in one of these maker spaces. So there's a laser cutter, there's a 3D printer, there's a welding torch, there's access to stuff that you might have at home, which I think is great.
Yeah, no, I think, and that, I think you hit on some of the key points on, what a hackathon needs to include in terms of, having a diverse range of resources, allowing you to solve problems. It's not just learning, it's solving problems that matter. So the broader the category, the better, in a way. And it is, I can't understate the importance of having fun, because you're using your mind in ways that you don't day to day, because it's a very constrained problems that you're working on. A lot of the times it's repeating, saying the same things you said before to a different client. But in this case, it's all exploration. So I agree that expansive thing is important. Now, interested in your view.
The physicality.
Yeah.
The physicality, I think, can be quite interesting, because a lot of ours, even in telco, which is a bit more physical than a lot of computing, you rarely get to go, well, this is the phone I made or whatever. Sometimes there's a bit in it, maybe you made, but it's not, look, this is my phone. I have a brother-in-law who's a roofer, and like every now and again he'll be going like, where are we driving to now? And he'll drive up to a house he built the roof on and just look at the roof and just be proud of his roof. And we don't get that a lot of the time. It's pure, as this kind of techie. And I think it's great if you can do that. If you can go, well, here's an idea, I've built this. Even if it's not that useful, even if it's a hat that reads your mind or something, it's fine. Yeah, that's a joke. There you go.
Yeah, that's it. Or if you've done it on some that you've published, where it, sort of automatically measures your temperature, body temperature monitor. I have a table just over behind me here where it has, lots of little things that physically exist, from like the first time I got like an Arduino to flash an LED on and off, through to, more complex stuff. Now, one question that always comes up, and it limits the addressable market for people that come into hackathons, is, do you need to be a coder to take part?
No, not at all. So there's people with sort of technical skills in the sense of electronics or laser cutters or 3D printers, but they're great, and I think they're probably in many ways preferable to the coding talents in the sense of, but realistically, anyone who wants to come along, learn something new. If you do want to learn how to do laser cutting and you have an idea of something, sculpture you can make at a hackathon, come along and try it. Someone there will help you out. Someone should be, which I think is probably the most important thing at hackathon, that it's a friendly environment. New people can come along. You can make friends. You can try new things. You can learn new things. Make mistakes, which is part of learning. Make bad things, which is the only way to start making good things. And just get out there and start, I think, is the important lesson, maybe.
No, I agree. Absolutely. One of the things I always emphasize is, you don't need to have technical skills. One thing I always recommend is if you have somebody that's good in graphical design, who can help in how you present, because the pitch is everything in a hackathon. There's all the fun, there's the learning, but then to win, you need to be able to pitch the problem solution and for it to look good. And when you have graphic design people, you have people that have communication skills, that makes the pitch, it just transforms it. So that diversity of having coders, people with a range of skills, and people with soft skills in terms of how to communicate that problem solution and how, because the hackathon can only solve a tiny piece, but
yeah,
it's
it's to get an idea out there. It's to
exactly
to meet people. It's not, at the end of the weekend, you're not going to make a ventilator or something that actually works. That's not practical. It'd be dangerous to think that way.
Yeah.
Another thing I think is interesting about designers is they tend to have more empathy than the average engineer. No offense. And even if they're a graphic designer and they just like make designs for rugby shirts or something like this, the fact that they're thinking, will a person like this? How will a person react to this? What will someone, the fact that they're thinking that on a regular basis means that when it comes to, your talking hat, how should the hat look? How should it, that sort of stuff they can think about, and sometimes it comes to better ideas quicker. And I think that's really useful.
Exactly. It's that diversity. So focusing in on Science Day Hack that you did this year. So, how did you build the team for the Science Day Hack?
So Science Hacks Day was about 6 weeks ago, which was in the before times now. If you understand that the world was still fairly normal at the time, right? You could actually meet up together in a way that we just can't anymore, for example. Yeah. So I had an idea of, is it possible to make some of the parts of a ventilator, or at least show the idea that we might need a lot more ventilators quite soon. I was aware of this issue from a long time ago, from about 15 years ago, that there just wasn't enough ventilators if there was a pandemic. So I had this idea, I put it out there on Twitter. I saw the Science Hack Day was coming. You put up your proposal. I found a few medics, half friends of mine and half stuff. Shubhangi, who's great. She was a medic and she was helping us on the day, and she had maker skills as well, which is great.
Excellent.
She came along, helped us. Some people at the day, you pitch your idea at the start, 5 minutes just to say, here's the problem, here's what we're trying to do. People kind of understood the problem. It's quite simple. You need to get air into people when they can't breathe for themselves. Okay, what's that going to involve? And people can get the problem. It's a mechanical problem, if that makes sense. Oh, yeah. So got a great team to join us. Some engineers that knew like laser cutting, some engineers that knew motors. One thing is, because 3D printers are so common now, I hadn't quite realized this. You can get really cheap, really strong stepper motors. Mm-hmm. And we just use these. It was sort of a peace dividend of the 3D printer war. But stepper motors have just gone a lot cheaper and a lot more powerful. So yeah. So that was great.
Gotcha.
And it's because of all this open source ecosystem, which is around, the Arduino, the Raspberry Pis. It allows you to do things now much easier around AI vision. Like, you can do an AI vision project for €50 now, whereas with a Raspberry Pi and a camera, whereas even 5 years ago, I don't know how much that would have cost you. Oh, yeah. In fact, it wouldn't have even been possible, really, what you can do with a Raspberry Pi now, 5 years ago, for certainly less than $1 million.
Gotcha, yeah.
The audio stuff is really easy. Arduino can do some pretty good audio stuff at the moment. There's starting to be open FPGA tool chains, and there's open FPGA little boards you get for 20 quid, and they can do amazing things, the amount of computation, if you know how to use them. So there's definitely big opportunities now in the sort of open source hardware world for creating these little ideas, making a proof of concept quite quickly, which how do you think, the telecom people you deal with daily, how do you think that's going to affect them?
We have to look at it regionally. I think that, communications is a fundamental enabler, and, all the, the open source projects, the technologies you're discussing enable the realization of solving a specific problem. And the problems that we face, both in our work, home, and community lives, are different around the world. What we're seeing, say, in Sri Lanka or in Cambodia are very different to the problems we have either over here in New York or with yourself in Dublin. And it's that regionalization, that focus on solving local problems and solutions. We're now, getting our hands on, the technologies that, you're right, would have cost millions, would have required a global corporation to be able to assemble. Now, I could be in Sri Lanka and assemble components to solve a problem that, can solve a problem that's specific to Sri Lanka, or But also the key is, yeah, and the reason why the telco pieces, I still consider to be very important, especially in Asia, is there are very few organizations in a country that have the reach of a telco. A telco reaches every business. It reaches every person. And my personal view is telco should be facilitating science day hacks, basically so hacks where people are solving local problems that matter to them in their work, family, home, sort of community lives, because they're all specific to that country, but also, and what's more important in terms of the realization, because what happens with a hackathon is you get a team together, they create something, they're excited, they've learned something new, they've solved they solved maybe a bit of a problem, but they're energized, they go through and they solve the broader problem. And then how you bring that to market, say in say Vietnam, would be very different to how you bring it to market in India, to Singapore. So that localization matters intensely. And again, it's having an organization that's in place that can help with that, because as a small organization, well, recruitment, funding, there's a whole host of list, but just awareness. And again, through the hackathon, and then creating the team, and then being able to bring that to market in terms of market testing. Because back to the point you made earlier, know your customer. Having a team and a diverse team where you can have those people that are intensely focused on how are people going to use this, how are people going to perceive that, not only in the pitch but in the actual use case, enables you to create a whole host of local value. And that, I think, is missing. We always sort of treat, we need something to come from the US or from Western markets, and it's not. The tools now empower anybody, anywhere in the world to solve problems that matter to them. So that's why I think it's important. And the stuff that you've described in, through, the tools you assembled with Science Day Hack are so important. And we need to get this replicated in many more countries around the world.
One thing is, it's kind of an aside from hackathons, but I think it's worth mentioning is there was always this sort of a problem of, can we make something? Can we invent a new widget? Yeah. And, and you can do that. But then there was the problem of, right, now I have this new smart watch or smart hat or whatever it is. Does anyone want it? And I think it's fine to not worry about that at a hackathon. Just build it and great, just build it. But it used to be quite hard then to go, right, now we have the smart hat or whatever it is. Is anyone going to buy it? Oh, let's make 10,000 of these. And even if they're cheap, that's not going to be cheap. That costs an awful lot of money to get them made up. Yeah. But there is things now like Kickstarter and different versions of these around the world, which means making things are now quite easy. Finding out if anyone's going to buy it is quite easy. And that's the really, those two are the really hard parts, and they have become a lot easier now.
Yeah. So, no, absolutely.
You start a Kickstarter, no one buys it, you spent 10,000 on this, you're okay. Do you know what I mean? Whereas even 10 years ago, you couldn't have done that,
Oh, yeah. But it's something that I see time and time again. It's that, that marketing piece, getting it, into people's hands is tough. Getting people to give you that feedback, because a lot of the times, nothing happens. It's like, you do something and then it's just never, knowing the customer and, that cycle, because it does nothing, when you create something in a hack, you're solving a problem, but is it solving in a way that the target customer will use and then pay for? And
it almost never is. It's always the fifth generation or something, but that's fine. If you've in a weekend what you want, exactly. Is this idea vaguely okay? Yes or no?
Exactly. But it's having that facilitation is tough. And you're right. There's Maker, sort of Kickstarter. There's a whole range of sort of tools that are emerging in that. Of course, with TADSummit, we tend to be more programmable communications focused. That's always like the sort of base, the telecoms piece that we sort of build out on. Why we sort of look at sort of from the telecom side, it being the benefits or the sort of strengths that they can bring to hackathons. But just wrapping up on the Science Day hack, from what you did, interested on what you created, do you think it could be viable?
So One of the things I learned over the weekend was how difficult ventilators are. And now that sounds obvious, but like I knew it wasn't going to be a practical system after this. But I really did learn, no, wait, let's just get the people who've been building them for years.
Yeah.
In Medtronic, who I know
Yep.
they're in Ireland, I don't know if they're based in Ireland, they've open sourced their systems. There's an open source Irish ventilator project going.
Yeah.
They've gotten the people who really know what they're doing rather than just messers like me or whatever. And they're building this stuff and they're putting the plans out there. And that's what should be done. I was never thinking I'd build something practical in this case, particularly for something medical.
Yeah.
If you're inventing, a temperature sensor, you can do yourself because that's fairly simple. Whereas something that's actually going to attach to a person, no, it's a medical device. You're not going to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. But in a way, it puts pressure on global corporations like Medtronic. Because and my sister-in-law used to work for Medtronic. So Minneapolis, St. Paul, I think is where their headquarters is.
Okay.
And they supply medical equipment, all around the world. And actually part of what they do is adding programmable communications into their devices, because it enables them to build relationships with all the end users and to provide the real-time analytics and all the rest of it. But that's beside the point. Because actually.
But it becoming close, that's getting it into the telecom world, if you know what I mean. If this is essentially an IoT device now, that's very interesting.
Yeah. And then just again, because you do some work in Asia, because your diverse background, the sort of successes that you've had in being involved in hackathons, we run TADHack Global, have done since 2014, and sort of locations all around the world. Asia, has been in the past quite a strong location. Now, part of the challenge we have is in Asia, telecoms is sort of seen as a telco thing, rather than it being, a Google, an Amazon, a Facebook thing. They all have communication solutions with APIs that enable anybody with any web-centric skills to use them. In Asia, it's still, there's this sort of not belief, but it's sort of saying, that's telecoms, that's telco. We have to look to telcos there. So we've struggled a little bit over the past couple of years to sort of maintain the momentum in hackathons around communications. I know this is a topic that, of course, we want to discuss more broadly across TADSummit Asia, but I'm just interested in your perspective around, what can we do to help stimulate broader interest, broader involvement around hackathons that are communication related in Asia?
So I'm slightly wary to give too much advice, because you give examples of the needs of someone in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
Really going to be met by someone in Sri Lanka. They're going to look around and they're going to see, right, I have an Arduino, I have a Raspberry Pi, I have a camera, I have a microphone, I have these other sensors. How can I, sensor some computer to an actuator and so on? What is the combination that needs to happen for me if I'm in Thailand or whatever? What's going to work? Am I sensing pollution and outputting lights? Am I sensing loud noises and outputting a warning? What is the coming in? What's going out? But because of these open source systems are quite cheap now, there's so many possibilities that I think just opening it up and making people aware that in a weekend you can go take some information in, make a little program to process it, and have something going out. You have to figure out what that is. That could be a smart hat, or that could be whatever it is, but you'll have to figure that one out. But it's so many possibilities there. Like if you talk to kids anywhere, get them to do an invention, they'll draw a silly invention, and it's a great idea, and there you go. And it's a robot that walks on custard, whatever it is. They kids come up with this, but so do athletes if you give them a chance.
Exactly.
And now we have the stuff to do it, and cheaply. So I think just sort of encouraging people and maybe giving them a space with some of these extra laser cutters and 3D printers that maybe you don't have at home.
Yeah.
I hope that's enough. I don't know, but
no. But I think that is a very important point, and we are seeing them pop up. I mean, there's like several, like in Singapore, where they have maker spaces. They have a whole range of facilities. So and of course, Asia is a very diverse market. But I think that is one of the steps. And then I think the other where we have seen commercial success, where ideas have been brought to market and then achieved, commercial success and multiple commercial successes, is when you have the support of a team that, because it tends to be more entrepreneur engineering bias, to be honest, through this process, that can help them get it to market, can do the testing, can be introduced to, angel networks, or, Kickstarter is one, but there's, that can help them get through, all the pitfalls of idea. We think we've got something here, to something that, can be launched. And the key is, whatever you launch, it only has a time of life. How do you use the data and the experience from the service that you've launched to then move on to the next service and the next service and the next service? It's that sort of, building upon the experiences. In fact, I did an interview with Rowan, who was one of the first ever winners from TADHack Global back in 2014. And, he, highlighted it was the marketing support that helped them take their idea, which was OfferHut. It's just using SMS and USSD to be able to give local offers. So it's for small businesses to be able to offer, sort of say, hey, in this particular region, we've got 10% off this particular, food at our store. And people can receive the SMS and, it encourages them to go to the store. The ubiquity, because it was just so dumb and so simple, SMS-based, USSD-based, enable them to get something up and running. Now, and that achieved a certain, it's still active, it's still running today. But of course, you get the growth and then there's a maintenance phase. But what they learned as they did that is, but we're not addressing a particular segment of the market that's more sophisticated, that, have credit cards or have access to credit cards. So then it was like a version of card offers. So it's credit card offers. Now this is to a different segment, but they'd learned from that mass market, there's this segment that's underserved, and then they focus in on an offer in that space. So again, all based using telecom technologies.
There's one idea that I think is worth mentioning, which is the idea of sort of permissionless innovation. Okay. A lot of the time you have to go to your boss and say, here's my idea. Or you go to an investor and like, this sounds a bit strange, but a lot of times it's someone like you and me. It tends to be a white guy of a certain age. Do you know what I mean? And if you have different problems and you see different problems, and you're younger, you're from a different location, maybe you don't speak English, maybe it's a different, the area is a different area. You don't want to have to go to that VC or whatever it is, because they're not going to understand your problems. They're not going to look at you and go, oh, that's someone like me, I kind of trust them, which happens implicitly. So a great thing with these hackathons is that you can bypass a lot of that. You can make something, you don't have to ask anyone's permission. If it's a good idea, they can eventually go on Kickstarter. Again, no one's permission has to be asked. You don't have to get, a government minister to sign off on things. It's just made, and good luck. And it's something, maybe because we're sort of more in the industry, we don't know how difficult it might be for someone outside the industry without these cheap tools and without these cheap ways to make things.
That's an excellent point. And that really does capture, it's that permissionless innovation. And I've never heard of that term before, but it's such a barrier. And whatever we can do to just sort of open the gateways so people, in the problems that they see in their communities, can be solving problems, it's creating value. So that's an excellent point. Cool. No, this has been great. Again, that was the point. It's just for you to share your experiences, why you get involved, the value that it creates, and then, of course, to bring it back to what we're trying to do with TADSummit Asia. So cool. Again, David, thank you so much for your help, advice, and support. This was really great. Thank you.
No problem. So I'd like to thank everyone in Science Hack Day Dublin and in TOG, the makerspace in Ireland, because they're really great and they get a really good community. Even in Dublin, quite a small place, they've gotten a great community together. And I think that could serve as a model for other places, maybe even in Asia, to see, oh, it can happen. If Dublin can do it, then, anywhere can. So.
Well, no, I mean, it's a pretty small community there, but there's a lot we can learn.
All right.